Now that we have talked about the manufacturing process, we will discuss the different manufacturing methods available for metals, polymers, ceramics, and composites. In this video, we will focus on metals. So what is a metal? A metal is a material that is hard, shiny, formable, and has good electrical and thermal conductivity. Some examples of metals are bronze, which is an alloy made of two other metals, copper and tin; steel, which is made up of iron, a metal, and carbon, a nonmetal; and aluminum, which is made up of manganese, a metal, and silicon, a metalloid. Most metals used in manufacturing are a combination of metal with other metals or metal with nonmetals. The common metal manufacturing types that we will talk about are die casting, die cutting, sand casting, stamping or forming, and metal 3D printing. Before we get into the types of metal manufacturing, let's talk about what a die is. You will hear this word quite a few times throughout these sessions. A die can be thought of like a mold because it is used to form materials into predetermined shapes. However, molds are typically hand-filled with a liquid material that will solidify into the desired shape over time. Dies are metal tools with cavities shaped like the final product, similar to a mold. However, they are also accompanied by either a mechanical or hydraulic press that compresses the material and forces it to take form of the cavity. Dies come in many forms. Here is an example of a finished product being ejected from a die. This is a stamping or cutting die used to cut the same shape over and over again. And finally, this is a rotary die, which cuts or punches shapes into sheets of metal fed through the two cylinders. So how is a die made? First, the die must be designed using 3D modeling software. This design must have incredibly precise dimensions and specifications. The 3D model is converted into a set of instructions that a CNC machine will understand. Next, the die components are machined into the desired shape. These components are typically made of steel or aluminum alloys. After the components are completed, they are sent to post-processing, where they are heat-treated to add strength to the material, and the components also go through grinding and smoothing to create a smooth surface finish. Finally, all the die components are assembled with great precision to guarantee a high-quality, long-lasting die. Now that we understand what a die is and how it's made, let's talk about the cost. An industrial die machine used by manufacturers costs no less than about $100,000, but that cost increases very quickly depending on the size and type of machine. You as an entrepreneur would not need to invest in a die machine. However, you would need to pay a die maker to create your own custom die mold. A custom die can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $100,000, depending on its size and complexity. Dies also may take about 8 to 12 weeks to be manufactured and ready for use. Because of these high costs, utilizing a die machine is only economically feasible if you plan on producing 20,000 or more parts per year. The highest quality dies can perform up to 1 million cycles, meaning it can be used up to 1 million times before wearing down and needing to be replaced. Die casting is the first form of metal manufacturing on our list. Molten metal is fed into the die and compressed. After the metal cools and solidifies, the die machine ejects the final product. Die casting produces highly accurate parts every time. This manufacturing method is ideal for high volume production. A die cutting machine may come in a few forms. Pictured here is an automatic rotary die cutter. The cylindrical rotating tool is loaded with shapes that are pressed into thin sheets of material, creating a cutout of the desired shape. Die cutters can also perforate or crease material. The excess material is removed, leaving us with several identical cutouts. The sand casting process begins with a pattern that has the same exterior shape as the final product. The pattern is split into two halves, and each half is placed into an empty sandbox. Sand is poured into the boxes and compacted. The sandboxes are flipped over, the pattern is removed, and we are left with 2 sand molds. These molds are clamped together, and then molten metal is poured into the mold. Once the metal has cooled and solidified, the sand is removed with water, unearthing the final metal part. Some post-processing, like sanding, polishing, and removing excess metal, may be necessary. This form of manufacturing does not produce highly accurate parts, but has a relatively low cost and is ideal for low-volume production. Stamping or forming is a manufacturing process that reworks sheets of metal into specific shapes. A stamping press consists of tool and die surfaces, which may punch, bend, or emboss the sheet of metal into its final shape. This is a cold forming process, so you do not need to wait for hot metal to cool down, which in turn speeds up production time. The previous methods of metal manufacturing are called subtractive or formative manufacturing, meaning material is removed or reworked to create a final product. Metal 3D printing is a form of additive manufacturing, which means material is added layer by layer to create the final product. The metal 3D printing process starts with shallow layers of powdered metal spread evenly across a powder bed. A laser melts the powder with high precision, then another layer of powder is added. This process is repeated until the product is complete. Then the excess powder is removed, unveiling the final product. In future sessions, we will discuss several forms of additive manufacturing.